Thank you, Brian. Can you hear me well like this?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
Good.
Well, hi, my name's Lex. I'm based in Switzerland, and I'm very much into search and wikis with my company DataSpecs. And I'd like to thank Brian for a perfect scheduling, because my talk or my presentation makes particularly sense in the wake of Gina's talk, and also it's connected to the MediaWiki stakeholders group, because as we heard in the panel discussion, because this talk should very much be under the auspices of MediaWiki stakeholders. So I'd like to introduce to you the initiatives I took to facilitate managing the MediaWiki deployments. This should also be a teaser talk for a Create camp that we're going to have tomorrow after tomorrow, according to schedule. So what is this all about? The question is, what could or should we try to implement or facilitate with regard to managing MediaWiki in a broader sense? So of course, we're going to address a couple of use cases, very specific ones. I'm going to get to them in the next slide. Then there's the question of environments. I'm thinking of new setups. Also, it should be able to be placed, or MediaWiki Manager should be able to be placed next to existing systems. And then we want to probably manage classic setups, that is in the distinction to containerized setups. And then ideally also covering Linux, Mac, and Windows. Then the user groups, I'd like to distinguish three. One are web users, let's say the point and click and type and select users. Then we've got system administrators, and of course the developers. And we want to address all of these with specific functionality. Then I also want to convey a couple of best practices, especially in terms of what to use and how to use it. You will understand that in the course of this presentation. And then also managing content, because the content is a crucial part of course, any application of MediaWiki in a domain. And then also extend this functionality not to single wiki, but of course, a couple of wikis. So what's very important with all of this is what I call an orthogonal modularity, because imagine that all these 6 points actually are 6 dimensions that we can design the system for, and all those should be orthogonal, which translate into independent. So with regard to the presentation I'm going to have in the second part here of the system as it is running, I'm going to show the functionality for one wiki in a containerized setup running one node and one pod on Linux on the CLI abstraction layer. We're getting to this in a second. So which features and use cases do we want to talk about? Whatever's here in bold can be shown by the presentation or the demonstration. The second part, of course, we want to install, configure, upgrade. We want to manage the extensions, also auxiliary services. Very importantly, we want to snap, shoot, or manage snapshots. And I'd like to do that in an acidic time machine style, so that we can rewind, go back in time with the wiki and forward to more recent versions. All of this is based on the idea to actually handle smart patches. Imagine that you upgraded your wiki. There's one facet of content that was there before you handled the update or the upgrade. So you want to go back, extract that content facet, and patch it to the one that is running currently. So a very technical term there would be patch scope, logical item potency, and reversibility. We can talk in the Cray camp what I mean by that. Then we want to manage content. This is with regards to apps, because of course you know that an empty MediaWiki is not very useful at the beginning. We need structure on it, so that should cover that functionality as well. Then we want to script the tasks on all 3 abstraction levels, bash scripts, functions, and then compose them into new bash scripts, API calls that actually parameterize and wrap those scripts or functions, and maybe, and that's maybe a daring wish, a macro recording functionality on the UI level, akin to the Microsoft Office macro recorder. And then one last idea would be, it would be nice to actually be able to wrap up or package a specific MediaWiki snapshot so that it's self-contained, so it can give itself a birth on any operating system, which would be easier to archive actually domain content. Then, what are the building blocks and contents? This is now where everything connects to Gina's great introduction to Kubernetes. At the basis is a MediaWiki Manager YAML. This corresponds to the deployment YAML that Gina showed, which is actually a Kubernetes deployment manifest. Then we've got a couple of containers, actually 2 at the moment, MediaWiki and MariaDB. We've got a MediaWiki Manager config database. This is to avoid having to actually edit configuration in local settings or any adjacent file. This is a very simple single file SQLite database that compiles into a included local settings PHP. Then with regard to the 12-factor app, we want to use environment variable configured shell scripts for every single functionality that I'm going to show. And then we have the MWStake services, something I'm going to introduce right now. If we look at this graphically, on the right, you see the MediaWiki Manager artifacts. So we've got the CLI, the API, and the UI. At the moment, the only thing which is actually implemented is the CLI. This controls everything. So we've got MediaWiki Manager YAML, which is the blueprint for the whole system, together with the environment variables. I'm using Podman here, not Docker, to actually create and run the containers. So a container is nothing else than a process that contains some core data. That core data is actually completed by custom data, which is volumed in. We've got the configuration and the snapshots, and everything in all together sort of, molds into your wiki. And very importantly, you see your wiki's on the right, 4 building blocks in the middle, actually obstacles, and MediaWiki Manager on the right. That means that MediaWiki Manager is not a component of your wiki. It is outside. It's like very much, the screwdriver shouldn't be part of the object that you actually try to fix. Then, very quickly to the idea of the MediaWiki certified extensions and app service. Imagine we have a MediaWiki core running, and of course it's extended by extensions. Now we might group those extensions with regard to their quality. Now the quality could refer to 3 aspects. One is how well they are integration tested. Integration here means all permutations, the core plus any other A extensions in the case of A, and how well are they maintained and documented. And for the sake of this part here, we assume that A is slightly better, of better quality than B and C. Now, if we have and this green dot here can represent an extension or a group of extensions that together with the core make up an app. So this would be a green application or structure or ontology. Then the ones that make use of extensions in group B would be yellow, and these would be red. And of course, everything in terms of reliability boils down to that green is better than red. And the idea now is that MediaWiki stakeholders could offer a service where we actually vet those extensions and come up with such a ranking. I had this implemented with the UI I had running. This has been discontinued for a strategic decision not to switch technologies, because this was in Material UI and React connecting to a Go API, but we want to go back to PHP for the API and the OO UI for the UI. But as you can see here, so this could be a UI list, sort of searchable, and you can see a link below. I've collected all these extensions in a JSON file that would be parsed on any abstraction level into the catalog. Now, talking about abstraction layers, I'm going to now just show you briefly what we're going to do with the presentation that's just coming now. Imagine we isolate one functionality that would be enable an extension. So we want to enable labeled section transclusion in this example. So this is basically a parameterized shell script. That shell script will, and as I said, as you can see, it's grayed out. This is not implemented yet or not on a production level, would make use of the CLI script to actually execute the functionality. For security reason, that would be hashed and whatsoever, but that's an implementation detail. And on top of that, we would have the UI with a classical button. And the demonstration I'm going to show you now is actually confined to the CLI level. As I just said, right, CLI level containerized on Linux. You can look up all the commands I run actually on this GitHub repo, where there's a EMWCon Spring 2021 demo shell script that is sort of staged. Now, this is the system as it's running. Now, this is something you know from Gina's presentation. So we've got one pod already running. We've got 3 containers running, notably the MediaWiki 135.0 and the MariaDB. And we've got 4 images ready to be used in with regard to the functionality I'm going to show you right now. Then we can query the status of the system at the moment. And I'm going to put this here and actually load the wiki on the left. So here you can see the wiki that is actually running here. We've got the MWM config. So at the moment, our SQLite database contains these 3 entries. These are the these are the 3 entries that are going to be added to the local settings PHP that is container internal, and which is ephemeral and static. So there's nothing you can change there. Then, of course, for composer-based extension, we've got composer local JSON. Snapshots is still empty. And this is the MWStake certified extensions catalog. This is actually a parsed extensions JSON selection. So this would be the first glimpse at actually having a drop-down somewhere where you can choose what you want to run or install. So let's go to the demo. So welcome to the demo. The first thing we're going to do is enable the labeled section transclusion. So the code which is run is CLI labeled section transclusion. Now it's taking a snapshot before it actually makes that change, because we want to snapshot every step so that we could rewind back in case of some problems. And here we've got the version page, and you will see how it appears at the moment. You see labeled section transclusion is not installed. First one takes a little time. So it's now running. Let me continue with the next one, and then I can explain to you what happened on the left. So we're enabling now semantic scribuntu. Here, the same thing will happen. It will take a snapshot, but we have already labeled section transclusion has been added. Just reading what Brian is pasting. Use template. No, because it's not the current template. It's a complete dump of the database. So you go back completely. But that's exactly, if you want to save the templates from before or after, you can smart patch your wiki and then take it from there. But let's talk about that after the presentation, so you might get the whole idea. So now we added semantic scribuntu here. Now, the next functionality I want to show you, and let's move this a little bit. The idea is that we have initial content that we inject into the wiki for when it's run for the first time. So here we would have a main page wiki text. Now, if we go back to the main page, you can see it has changed between these two. And there's a red link called Help Editing Pages. That's because we now want to inject the first section of this Help Editing Pages from MediaWiki.org. So that's a functionality I added so that it can import content from any other wiki. So you see this has now turned blue and it's placed in here. And the third functionality, and I'm going to start it and then later explain it because that can take some time. This is GitHub repo based content. If you remember my talk in Houston, that's what this was all about. So you can see it's now injecting content from a repo once it has completed the snapshot, of course. And so that GitHub repo would contain the content in this form. So per namespace, you have one folder, and you can see one by one they're injected now. Live update is showing us this now. Now, while this runs, I can tell you that this whole content move operations and code is completely implemented in Bash using curl. The idea is that this should be the lowest level building blocks that then can be assembled into all sorts of APIs serving all sorts of UIs. So keep things as orthogonal as possible. So when this is done, I'd like to show you 3 more functionalities. And we're at P because they are actually alphabetically sorted. So you can see that now we're running run jobs, and also we're running rebuild data from Semantic MediaWiki, and you can see everything's there. Now this is done. Now let's have a look at how our wiki looks now. So we report the status, and you can see that we've got 2 WF load extension directives in our config. We've got Composer local JSON has got semantic Ubuntu, and if we do it like that, you can see the 3 snapshots. So that was before enabling labeled section transclusion. That was before semantic Ubuntu, and that's before actually injecting the contents. Now, let us actually go back to before we enabled semantic Ubuntu. So the code to do that is actually this shell script, and we choose this ID. And it's of course taking another snapshot because we don't want to lose the logical chain across times. You know, if you want to go back to the future, make sure you take the right turn in the past. And so we are always taking snapshots before we actually change data in the in a large way. And if we go back to, well, actually we can stay here because you will see that the whole wiki is going to be restored to before. So the main page will be changed as well. And this is actually re-implementing everything. So it's putting the database, it's putting the config database, and of course all volume or all persistent data. So we talk about the vendor folder, the images folder, the skins folder, and the extensions folder. Now that takes some time here. I'm already preparing the next one. That should, yeah. These are a little ugly error messages from Restic, which is the snapshot tool. That's because it sort of gets confused with symbolic links. Don't know why. Here, of course, we have to run Composer. We are running the Composer lock file that was exported together with the snapshot. Whoa, there's a, no, done. So when you look at that, we are back at the other version we had before. And if we report the status, we've got another. So we got the before restoring. Now, another functionality is the upgrade. So imagine there's a new version, you're alerted in your UI or however, and it asks you, it offers you to actually choose one container image to upgrade to. So I'm going to put that here. And now the entire, I mean, of course, we make a snapshot as always. And this will remove the entire pod with all volumes, all networks, all configuration, and rely entirely on the snapshot. And you will see, the snapshot might take a little time. And then just recreates all containers based on the new image. And of course, I had already downloaded the image so that it was pretty fast. So you see here, Kubernetes has recreated the new containers based on the new image. And remember, we had 135.0 before. If you paid attention to the version page, actually. I might confuse it if I go already here. No, you see now local settings is not ready yet. I wonder whether that was a good idea to actually just hit that right now. Should though. No, there it is, 135.1. And it's now finishing the upgrade. And the last functionality, I'm still in time, is actually so it's updating the dependencies again. I just didn't want to skip functionality just to show you that this is the real thing, that it's not fake. So there we go. And you can see that in terms of snapshots, we've got before the upgrade. And you can see that we've still got labeled section transclusion. So just to show you that we can disable, sorry, that's up here. Oh, here, yeah. This is the script to actually disable an extension. So I can do this, run it. That will be a lot quicker. Although, yeah, it takes another snapshot just to be consistent. And then you will see that it will have disappeared. So right now you see labeled section transclusion. Oh, it's already, no. Oh, no, you know what? That was removed before. Okay, never mind. But you get the idea, right? Finally, just show you the last slide here. What are the resources at the moment? So we've got the CLI code base, which is in this GitHub repo, MediaWiki Manager. Then there is a development collaboration page on MWStake. We've got a development discussion channel, which is on Riot, that you can subscribe. And tomorrow or after tomorrow, we're going to have a Create Camp. And I really like to have everyone there who's interested, nevertheless, whether you're users, admins, or developers. Of course, there's a lot of development questions at the moment, but also users and admins in terms of, what should be designed how. So I would be very grateful if I could have your input there. That's it. Thank you very much.
Hey, Lex, in Element, there's a stream of comments and questions you might want to read through and address now.
Okay. Let me maybe switch on the camera for a change. Yeah. Okay, then that's version of extensions. Sorry, this is quite a lot to read through. Yeah, exactly. The snapshot actually, well,
if you find any questions.
Yeah, okay. No, I identified two large topics here. One is, the snapshot takes the entire state of the system. So you can actually, restore everything. And if you need bits and parts from the future and from the past, you would do that with those smart patches. And then with regard to why this is done in Bash, actually, well, WSL would be one thing, but you have to understand that all these scripts, except the installer, of course, are run through the containers. So I haven't tested that yet, but theoretically, since those Bash scripts actually just use the MediaWiki Action API, and they CRUD, so create, read, update, delete some files in some volumes. And of course, that can be done from within the container. And in the container, we've got full control of the operating system. So if we port this to Windows, theoretically, and I'm not very seasoned there to actually judge whether that is a particularly good idea, but theoretically, we would have to create an installer in Exe or PowerShell or however you call that, and all the rest could actually stay in a specific Bash version as it is now working for the Ubuntu 2004 deployment. I guess these are the main topics of the questions at the moment, right?
From that, I don't think there's any new questions, and there's just some comments in the stage discussion you're going to want to go through and look at.
There we go. Jeffrey is he's a very important person for me because he's got a lot of inputs in the last 2 weeks came from him, and actually from Cindy as well. So Jeff, just read what Jeffrey is mentioning here. That makes all perfect sense. Yeah. Okay, I think that addresses it more or less. But as I said, I really invite you to join a Create Camp, and we can go through the details of everything. And then you can also let me know what you wish to see and how you would want it to work.